Okay, so we are going to make a version of this snap tab, but the one we're going to make this time is going to have a satin edge all the way around, and it'll be curved. I didn't cut the curve on this one because I don't have a half round cutter yet. I've been wanting to get one, but I wasn't quite sure how much I'd use it. So this one's just got a raw edge. It's got 2 layers of vinyl, white and then the dark. And I have snaps on both of them, but you can put rivets. So, and I'm going to make it with the Brother Repositional Hoop. And this is a Brother SE600 or 625 or 535 or LB700. They're all the same machine. And this repositional hoop allows you to make a bigger project, even though this is a 4x4 hoop machine. This design or project is actually about it's about 6 3/4 inches long, and the sewing field on this repositional hoop is 6.77 inches long. It's still only 4 inches wide. So we're going to do it in 2 sections. The top half of this hoop, which is really just a 4x4 up here, and then the bottom half of the hoop, which is really just another 4x4 hoop down here. So we're first going to concentrate on the top, and I'm using just 2 layers of marine vinyl, and I have them both black. So top and bottom are black, and they're wrong sides together, and I just have a little piece of Scotch tape holding them together on both ends. I'm using Tex 30 quilting thread, so it's not really embroidery thread, but it's just a little bit heavier or thicker than your 40 weight embroidery thread. Now this is 2 layers of stitching here, and there's no sheen. There's no sheen on this thread. And my tension is set at 5, and that's about, on a TOA gauge, a digital TOA gauge, that's about, on my machine, it's about 90 grams of pull. And the bobbin, I left at 30 grams of pull, which is what I use for sewing. So I'm kind of fudging it a little because I don't feel like changing my bobbin tension for embroidery. And since I'm kind of sewing, because this is going to show on both sides, I kind of want to use my sewing settings, and I'm using thicker thread and so on. So this does seem to work out. And let's see what else. What are my any other settings I've missed? I think, oh, and my stabilizer is wash away. And the reason why I have to use wash away is because I'm making a satin finish. So a tear away wouldn't tear away cleanly with satin. I mean, it would tear away cleanly, but you'd still have stabilizer in this edge, and it might show through a little and so on. So I have to use wash away. Now when I did this one, I used tear away, stitch and tear, because it tears away cleanly from a single stitch. So that should be about it. Now I was having some problems with my machine. I think my registration is off on my vertical sewing, and I think I messed up the arm the other day. So when I do the vertical stitching right now for this design, this stitch here is going to represent my tack down stitch. But when I do it, I'm anticipating it's not going to look that great. I have to check into that on Monday when Brother is open. So let's go ahead and we're going to stitch our placement lines for our fabric. Even though I don't really need them, we'll just stitch them anyways. So we're going to start with the top half of this hoop. So I'm going to hook up the top 2 rungs. There's 4 of them here, so I'm going to hook the top 2 into these top 2 notches here. Okay. Go ahead and pull up the design. It's on my USB stick. It's under Rehoop. Now you'll see I have 4 files here. One of them is just the single stitching, and then one of them is the satin. And it looks to me like the satin is down here, these 2. So this is the top half and this is the bottom half. Now what I've noticed is on this machine, if you save these files as a DST instead of a PES, you'll actually see the name of the file. We'll pull up the first one. Set. And there it is. And we don't need the first screen. Very rarely do I use the first screen because the first screen just moves things around on the screen. And I don't need that very often. Usually you want to see what's going on over here. So you're usually using the second screen. So I'll hit Edit End. Not all the time. I mean, sometimes you use this if you want to resize and so on. Okay, and then this screen will come to, but not at this point. So this second screen we'll be using later on. So we'll go into an embroidery. And you'll see there's 4 colors or 4 objects. And the first 2 are my placement or die lines that I'm going to stitch on the stabilizer. And I made them 2 different colors so that the machine would tie off on the first one and then go to the second one. I just don't want any jump threads getting in the way of my stitching when I stitch the design. So I'm going to just let it stitch, and I don't have to pull up my bobbin thread because this is just the placement line. And actually I'm wasting some thread here, but that's okay. So I'm actually going to hit the stitch forward. I like to do that sometimes. So I'm going to do +1 just to get to the first stitch, just so that I can make sure this thread is out of the way. And then I'll put my lever down. Trying to get both the screen and the stitching in. We'll see. And I'll hit start. I'm just kind of holding my hand over here on this thread. Well, I don't want it to get tangled up in here either. So you'll notice that I started farther away. And I did oil this foot, so this is an oil stain, I guess. I'm starting like farther away on these placements, stitches, because I don't want my tie-on knots to get anywhere near where my embroidery is going to stitch for my design. And so it cut the threads, and it's going to stitch the other die line for the top. And you'll notice that this machine makes tie-ons and tie-offs in addition to the ones that are digitized into the file. So that's that die line. So now we have to go completely out of this design and go to the bottom half. So we have to hit OK. And then there's nothing to hit, so we hit our back button. And then this is that second screen, hit back. This is that first screen, back. Cancel, OK. Go into the USB. And this is the one here, set. And again, edit end. Second screen we don't need yet. And then this screen is our embroidery screen. Here's our two placement or die lines. I almost forgot something. I always do this. Whoops. I always do this. I forget. Look where the needle is. It's still up here. If we're going to be stitching the bottom, you want to see the needle down here more. So I almost forgot to take it off and move it down to the bottom two rungs. Okay, so see, now we're down here, so that looks good. Okay, so now we'll press start. And that's why it's a good habit to get into hitting this plus stitch, this plus needle icon, because then you can go to the first stitch of this object. And it takes me up here, but just so you know, I'm overlapping where the die line starts because I didn't want it to start on the other existing knot. So I had it just come up here. It's going to shoot over and then come down. And there was one other thing I wanted to mention. Oh, right. I'm going to hit OK here. I've got my trim on because for most of this design, you can leave it on. I'll try to remember at the end of the design to turn it off, because then my very last satin stitch, I'll probably want to bury that long thread tail. So I'm going to try to remember that. So we'll just go ahead now and hit start. Okay, now I'll do the other part of the die line. Okay, so the die line is done, and I'm just going to stay on the bottom half, and I'll put my fabric on now, and we'll tack it down. We'll tack down at least the bottom half. So for this, you just want to make sure that you're covering the die line. This line here is the end of like where the stitching is going to be, where this curved stitching is going to be, this curve. So you want your fabric to come at least a ½ inch beyond that, because for trimming and stuff. So I'll just slide it in there, and I'll kind of peek and make sure it's kind of centered. I have plenty of leeway here because our actual cutting is only going to be an inch wide. So the fabric is like, I think I made it 2 3/4 inches wide I really only had to make it about 2.5, if that. But so there should be plenty, and I have plenty on the back. Kind of. So, but that's good. And I'm actually gonna just grab some painter's tape, and you probably don't need tape, but I'll just put a little bit here and then a little bit on the other side at the other end. And if you have something, you know, one of these purple things, a plastic, or if you want to use a tweezer or something, but plastic is always safer. You can use that as well. So I'll go ahead then, and I want you to be able to see the screen and the stitching. You can see where the cursor is up here. It's going to stitch around and then stitch back, and that'll be your tack down. It'll also be just this stitching if this is all you're going to make. If you're just going to make the single stitch, then you're done with this half after this stitches. So, and it's also going to stitch the snap die lines, the little placements for the snaps. So if I were just stitching this version, I would pull up my bobbin thread and tape it off to the side so that I could bury it, so that, you know, I could bury it underneath somehow, or even with between the two layers if you're good enough with the needle and vinyl. But since this is just going to be a tack down and it's going to be covered by the satin, I'm not really worried about it. I mean, I just don't think it's going to make too bad of a nest down there. I mean, I guess you could. I will. I'll just be responsible and I'll pull it up. Pulled some thread out. You have to push up the presser foot lever to grab some thread. Put it down, press needle down, needle up, presser foot up, hold my finger on the fabric, pull on the thread, and the bobbin came up. The bobbin thread came up. Pull that out. And then, since I know it's going to stitch here and come around, I can put the presser foot down, grab this, and I could just, oops, tape it over here. And then, you know, there won't be any thread nesting. And now we'll hit start. My stitching is still off. That is so weird. Because I stitched the same thing on my multi-needle and it stitches beautifully. So I think, I don't know what happened. These can get out of alignment, these single needles. But, so that's the snap tabs. Okay, so now we have to stitch the tack down for the first half, so we have to get back to the first, the top half. So we have to get out of this file completely. So we hit our back button, since there's nothing to hit on the screen. And this is that second screen, hit back. This is the first screen, back. Okay to cancel, okay. USB. Rehoop is the folder, and here's our first half. Okay, and we'll hit set and edit end. And this is the second screen. We'll hit embroidery. And one thing I forgot again is, see where the needle is? It's down here. And we want to be up at the top. So I have to move this back to the top. I have a bad, one of my thumbs is bad, so it's hard for me to, so we want to go back at the top. So now you could see it's at the top. And we do want to line it up, and also we have to get to the pink, which is the actual tack down stitch, the single stitching. So right now we're still at the very top at 0 of 4 objects. So we need to use our minus plus needle button, and we need to advance our thread color here to thread color number 3. So we'll hit plus. It was on thread color 1, it just didn't show it. But so when I hit plus, it went to 2, and that's just the second die line. We need to go to 3. So 3 is our tack down, and we do want to go to the first stitch of that tack down because we want to line it up with this existing one, because things do shift and move. After you embroider it, it pulls the fabric in and so on. So you always have to line up your second hooping. So +1 to get to the first stitch of that object. And you might be able to tell that if I lift the presser foot up and dial the needle down, the needle is to the left of this line. So we need to move the needle to the right. And also the needle has to be moved down. But how much? I will guesstimate that we need to go 1 millimeter right, and I'd say 1.5 millimeters down. Maybe not. I'll just go 1 and 1. So we have to dial our needle back up. We come back over to the screen. We have to get out of this screen, hit OK, and get out of, we're still in the embroidery screen, hit the back button. This is that second screen that will move the needle. Now technically it's moving the carriage, but we just want to think of it as the needle moving, then you won't get confused. So we needed to move the needle to the right 1 millimeter, so that's this button here. So 1, and you see it went a half a mil, and now it went 1 mil. 1 mil to the right, and I said 1 mil down. See, it went down in a negative direction because down is negative. And we'll hit it one more time. So it went 1 millimeters down, 1 millimeter to the right. Right is a positive direction. So now we have to check that and see if that was correct. So we'll hit embroidery. We'll hit this needle plus minus, and we'll go to object number 3, and we'll go to the first stitch of that object. And now we'll come over here and we'll dial our needle down. I don't know how straight I can get that. And we'll see, okay, so it's too far to the right, so I'm going to go back a 1/2 mil, and I think I should be right on. So over here, I'm going to hit OK, go back. I said I was too far to the right. I'm going to go back left a 1/2 mil. So now we're back. So to check these numbers now, we have to go back into embroidery, which we have to go back there anyways. Needle minus plus, go to the first stitch. Oops, do you see what I did? I went to the very first stitch of the design. That's the die line. I have to advance to the third object, 1. And there we go. We're on 3 of 4. And now I'll go to the first stitch of that object. And I'm just going to check it again just to make sure. And I'm actually right on. I'm close enough. That's pretty good. So we're going to go with that. And we're already on the first stitch. So we're ready to sew. And again, I'll just be responsible. The presser foot is up. I'll pull a little thread, presser foot down, needle up, presser foot up. Pull on the thread. Grab the bobbin thread. And then maybe I'll just grab some of this tape. Press your foot down, hold it nice and firm. Whoop. Okay. And we'll just start. Sometimes I go needle down instead of right away hitting start. I don't know why, it's just a habit. And then I'll hit start. And you can see the cursor here is down here, and it's going to stitch up around and back. I hesitated making this video because I'm having this issue with the vertical lines. Very strange, but I really wanted to get this video out, so. And I don't know if I mentioned, but this machine makes additional tie-ons and tie-offs in addition to the ones that a digitizer puts in the design. So these little circles, actually, I didn't digitize any tie-ins or tie-offs on those circles at all because I knew the machine would, and it would have been just too many tie-ons in here. And I overlapped the circles so that this machine would make the tie-on at one half and the tie-off at the other half. So then it's not as bulky. Now the rest of the design, I left my tie-ons in and my tie-offs because you never know, somebody might have this design and have a machine that doesn't add extra tie-ons and tie-offs. My Janome MB4 won't add extra ones. And Tajima's, Baradins, they don't. And I'm not sure about the higher end Brothers. I can't imagine the 6 needle or the 10 needle putting in extra ties, but I'm not sure. So anyways, so it's all done now stitching the tack down, but now we have to trim this. And I trimmed them one layer at a time. It was kind of a pain. I'm going to have to take this out then and cut around it, and I'll be back. So I did want to mention, before you trim it, you do want to take care of these threads that are part of the design. Now this is especially true if in fact this is it and you're done and you know you're not going to do the satin. Then you want to take care of these and bury them. Since we're going over them with a satin, I'm just going to I'll bring them to the back and then I'll just cut them in the back. And same thing with this one here. I'll go ahead and just cut both of these actually, but this one goes with the part of the design, and same thing with these two. And this one goes with this part, and then this can just be cut. So then I usually, when I go to the back, when I take the threads to the back, for this, since it's going to be covered up, I'm not going to be as picky, but I'll just stick the needle in one of the holes, and I'm not worried about making a knot and burying a knot. That's like 1/4 inch away from where it came out of, and so on. Kind of like what we do in quilting. I'm not going to worry about that since this is going to be covered up. So I'll just cut it close in the back, and I'll cut everything back here while I'm back here. Might as well, right? And I have to remember to turn the cutter off on the, see the little bird's nest it made over here when I first started the die line? That's why I didn't want that anywhere near here. And that's why I like to pull my threads up all the time. Lost my needle. Sometimes I snag it. This has a slot in the top. It's a snag it needle. Sometimes I snag it first and then put it in the hole, but sometimes I stick it in that hole first and then I snag it. Then it doesn't get tangled. You do it this way. Sometimes it is more of a pain though, especially with the camera in my way. I can't see where I'm going now. Okay, pull out some slack. I didn't have them on. Okay. It's really nice with leather. If you made this with leather and then just the suede is showing and then you cut it really close to the stitches, it looks really good. Now as far as trimming this goes, this is the strongest tiny scissor I have. I don't have an applique scissor or anything like that, or any of those really good scissors. So it's not going to be pretty. And like I said, I've just been doing it one layer at a time because it just seems easier for me. It's easier on my hands, and my hands aren't doing so great anymore. But you just want to kind of, I'm going to start kind of on the curve just to make it a little easier. And the top layer is always easy. It's that bottom layer that's a pain. But if you get the top layer really close, then, you know, but then it'd be nice if you had one of those scissors that allow you to go inside the hoop, you know, applique scissors, real applique scissors. So this is boring, so I'll just be back. Okay, so I got most of it trimmed off pretty close, and we're still on the top, so we don't have to line anything up because we just stitched the top. We know we're still lined up, and we'll go ahead and put it in the top 2 rungs. These top 2 here. Okay. And you can see that it's showing that it is ready to stitch color number 4 of the 4 colors. And you can see that it's going to stitch, here's the cursor starting down here, meaning it's starting down here, and then it's going to go up and around and stitch the satin. So this is where I'm going to pull up the bobbin thread for sure. And so let me grab the top thread while the presser foot is up and the tension discs are released. Now I've got some thread, put the presser foot down, go needle down, needle up, presser foot up, pull on the thread, grab the bobbin, and I'll just grab this, grab some tape, whoops, put the presser foot down to close the discs up there. So I get a nice firm grasp there on the thread. I'll just lay it right there, and we're ready to go. And I'll just put the needle down, and then I'll press start. Doing the triple beam. So it's finished with the top half. So now comes the tricky part. So we say okay, and let's remember before we get out of this screen, because we got to go to the bottom half again, but let's just remember to move our hoop back to the bottom. I'm just going to lift this up so I don't damage the stabilizer. Go to the bottom 2 rungs. Okay. All right. And I'll just, well, I'm going to need the presser foot up for this. So we're going to go out of this screen so we can bring up the other design. So we'll hit our back button, and then this is the second screen, go back. This is the first screen, go back, cancel, okay, USB, repo hoop. We're going to the bottom one, so that's this one here, set. First screen we don't need, edit in. This screen we will be coming back to, this second screen, but let's first go into embroidery and see how we need to adjust our design. We need to go to needle plus and minus so that we can get to our last object this time, which will be object or color number 4. So these thread colors, plus, plus. We're on 4. Let's go to the first stitch of 4. Now, since this is a satin, and this satin is going to tie on, and remember, it's doing my tie-ons, which I have three stitches for my tie on, and the machine has like 4 more. So we're going to do the +1 several times because we want to see what the boundaries of this satin is going to be. Now here's the other thing. I overlapped the satins. So if I dial this down, you can see it kind of looks like it's just even. The needle looks like it's just kind of even with, it doesn't look like it's overlapped at all. So, and that's because all that stitching probably pulled the design up. And so I probably do want to jog my needle up higher, but I don't know for sure. I have to fast forward all the way down to here and see how it's going to hit down here as well. So for right now, I just want to kind of get my width more than my height. I want to get my left-right position of my needle. So I'm going to fast forward over here 1 stitch at a time until I can get a good reading on where the needle's actually going to hit on the real satin. I mean, granted, yes, I could go +10 not to waste time so I can get down a little bit away from all the tie-ons, but I'll just do it the traditional way, I guess. I don't know if it's traditional or not, but so +1. Oh, needle is down. Whoops. You don't want to do that into the vinyl, but plus, it's really far over there. So now it's going back and forth. So now that it's on the vinyl, I'm going to dial down. And it is actually right on the edge of the vinyl. I mean, it almost looks like it's fine. I could maybe move it a 1/2 mil to the left. But let's go +1 and see over here. It just really looks far over there. I mean, granted, when the satin pulls and, it punctures this stabilizer and then pulls to the left, it's going to pull everything in, all the stitching in. So this is misleading, So I probably really do only have to move the needle to the left a 1/2 mil. So let's think about that. I'll put the needle back up. I'm going to come all the way down here. So if I go +10 up here, it's not going to travel far. Let's see. No, so I'm going to go +100. +100 again. Okay. So now I'm down here, and so I'll dial down. Okay, and I'm going to go +1 and see where it's at. It's really not bad. So let me go back up to, let's just try it with, go back to 0. It takes us back to the beginning, and then I'll go +3, 4, +10. So I think, oh yeah, I think I was going to go a 1/2 mil left, but I'll be darned, boy, that is just right on. I don't know if I want to do anything, to be honest. I think it was because when I see it, it's going right in the same needle hole puncture. I'm going to just do it from here, I think. I don't think I'm going to go back. I'm going to be risky. And there is a slight overlap. I just hope it's going to be okay when we get back over here. But I think we're okay. I think we're going to be okay. If not, oh well, I screwed up. So I've got the presser foot up. I'm going to pull some thread out, and I have to remember to turn off the cutter for the end of this design. Presser foot down, needle up. Oh, not there. I'm not at the beginning. Silly me. Good thing I just went in as the same needle hole. I have to be at the beginning of that object. So I'm going to just do thread minus, and now I'll go to 4, and then I'll go to +1 of that object, because it doesn't take you to the first stitch of this object. When you're fast forwarding, it doesn't take you to the first stitch. You have to actually do +1. So once you've got the color brought up here, then you have to hit +1 to get to the beginning of that color. That's only when you're fast forwarding like this. So now it's at +1. So that's the first stitch of this color. So I'm going to put the presser foot down, and I'm going to do needle down, needle up. Okay, and so I am going to grab some more tape and tape this one. Put my presser foot down. Boy, it's hard with the camera in my way. I can't even see what I'm doing. Okay. So that's it. So we're ready to go. And you see the screen, the cursor's already up there. And we'll just got our presser foot down. We got it taped here. This one's taped because it should overlap over here just a hair. And we'll hit start. I'll just do needle down and then hit start like I always do. See, it's making the knot outside there, but it's okay. I usually take since this is polyester thread, I usually take one of these things. You know, they have this, they're battery operated, their little burner, and I usually burn and melt those ends that stick out, and you kind of weld them together at that point. So that looks pretty good. I'm happy with that. Did I press off? I had to hit the OK button. I didn't press off. I hit OK to stop it. I'll hit OK again. My cutter is on. So I'm going to turn it off because I want to pull my threads, my long threads to the back. But you know, here's the thing. If you let it cut, it actually brings those threads to the back when it cuts it. And see, but I was thinking what I would do is I would knot these like a quilter's knot and bury them within the satin. It's easier to bury something within the satin than it is between two pieces of vinyl because you could end up puncturing the vinyl. So I'm going to just leave it, you know, as long thread tails. So my cutter is off. And now I'll hit start to let it finish its tie off. I hope I got it in time. I think I did. Finished embroidering. I just made it. So I'll go needle up. Okay. And so remember, my bobbin is attached now, and so is my top. So I have to take it off crisscross because of my thumb. I have a bad thumb. Okay. So now I'll just turn it like that and give myself maybe, I don't know, I don't need a lot, but sometimes when I make a knot, a quilter's knot, I like to have a lot just so it's enjoyable and I'm not stressing out. So maybe 5 inches. And there it is. Not bad for, you know, having to line it up and everything. It looks pretty good. And my stitches, my straight vertical stitches don't even look crooked, probably because they're triple beans and the machine is changing direction, so maybe it doesn't have a chance to go off kilter. I don't know. You know, if you bring your machine into a dealer, you got to spend $250 just to walk through the door. And I only paid $280 for this machine when it was on rollback at Walmart before the pandemic. God. Okay, so let's go ahead and put our snaps on. Well, first we'll bury our threads, and then we'll cut most of this out, and then I'll take it to the sink, and then I'll put my snaps on. So I don't know how well you can see this, but there is a nest right here. And this can happen if when your machine does the tie on and it didn't have anything to pull against when it, you know, pulled it for its first few stitches. So I obviously didn't have this thread tail, it's this one here, pulled tight enough. And here's the other thing. On a lot of my machines, I let it take, well, the sewing machines for sure, I let it take one stitch down and then I pull the top thread and it pulls out about 1 inch. That takes up any slack and gives the machine something to pull against as it finishes that first stitch. Because, you know, the last stitch always has something to pull against because, you know, everything's stitched prior to it, but the first stitches don't. So that's what happened here. I maybe, you know, I usually don't have a problem with this machine as long as these are held snugly, but I didn't have them snug enough. But maybe I will do needle down, pull the top thread 1 inch, and then hold it nice and firm, and then let it make its tie, finish making its tie on. With my Janome MB4, I have a whole system that I have to go through to prevent this from happening at the tie-on. Because when you have things that are going to be seen on both sides, or, you know, or even just a single, you know, a single stitch like these were single stitches, you know, you have to be careful with the tie-on. So for right now, I did try to get it out, but it's not coming out. So I'm going to just cut them and melt them with that tool. So I can't really see what I'm doing, but this is the long one that I think was towards the end. These here are the beginning ones. So I don't know. Just cut them, I guess. They're the beginning ones. And remember when I didn't want to make that tie-on out in the stabilizer? I may change that and have them start on the inside. I'll have to remember. That's actually, you have to change the stitch file for that, not the vector file. That's a little bit different, but it's okay. It's all doable. That's why you want to do a test sew all the time, because, you know, little things like this. So now there's a knot there, and I'm going to melt it with that tool. So these here on this side are really short, and I'm not going to worry about it because they were stitched over themselves. So I'm just going to slant my scissor and cut that. Oh well. Good. Okay. That's good. So that's it. So now we can take it out, and you can cut most of it. I don't know, I don't want to slice into it, knowing me. Might be safer to use a scissor. Just to get most of this off. And I do like to go inside, and usually it's easier to use a seam ripper so you don't gouge your fabric with your scissors. But just so I don't have as much of this mess to deal with, because it's sticky. I hate it. And like I said, I guess I could have left the stitch and tear on there, you know, but sometimes you can see it. So that's good enough. So we'll go ahead and clean that off, and I'll be right back. Okay, so here it is, all cleaned off, and these little ties that I melted are going to be at the top. with this kind of covering them. But I still think I'm going to change the file. That's the only thing I think I'm going to change, is I'm going to have them start in more so that I don't have this knot on the edge where the stabilizer is. That's why you can see it so well, plus the fact that the Brother machine makes a tie on and a tie off on top of mine. But at any rate, I'm going to put snaps on, so I don't need to slide this on first. If you were putting rivets in these holes, then you would want to slide your swivel snap on before you press your rivets together. So I usually do the inner ones first, because then they're easy to line up, you know, and then you can smooth it out to make sure that these line up, because you never know with things moving and everything how well these two are going to line up. They should be perfect, but so when I use snaps, I have to eventually use a hole punch, but to get it exact, actually there's a nice indent now since I took the ties off and I overlapped the circles, and the machine is just making one set of ties. A lot of times you can get your thing to just settle in on the hole, but I don't know. I may start doing that, but sometimes it's easier to just get in the very center of the hole with your awl. If you have leather, it's too hard, but this is vinyl. Once I feel it on my finger, I'll move my finger away and then push it in. That gives you more of an indentation to make your hole. And I'll do the same here. Put this right in the center. I don't know. It only takes a minute to do this. Then I have that indentation, and then this fits right in there. And I have this on the smallest diameter. And then push up. And that should be enough for those snaps. I'm using small snaps this time. And these snaps are so cheap. I will never get these again. Oh my gosh. This you can get on Amazon for like $15, or I don't even know how much. They were all unorganized. Do you know how hard it was to sort these? Plus, they're really cheap steel. They're not brass or anything or anything. And plus, they don't work well with these dies. These dies are from Buckle Guy, and I usually get my snaps from Buckle Guy because his are solid brass. I mean, you could get it either way. Or Ohio Travel Bag. I mean, they're both expensive. But I just decided to try these. Never again. It took me like over an hour to sort these. And the gold ones, they didn't even give you enough, you know, storage for all of them to separate them. They should have put them in little baggies, but they didn't do that. Anyways, so this die is for the flat one. This goes on the bottom. And then this little one with the little notch on the top is for the donut. And these two go together. And then these two are on the other side. This tower and this tower go together on the bottom. And then this little button goes in that little hole, little buttonhole. And so the first thing we'll do then is I'll just take this one and I'll put it in here in this hole. This is the right side. Make sure I'm on the right side. Am I? Oh, wait. No, that's the wrong side because this is the right side. God. And it didn't seem to puncture the hole. So, there we go. You kind of want to get the gunk out if there's any thread or whatever. Not all of the thread, it doesn't matter. Okay, so that's the right side. And then normally, okay, so then this would go, it would fit right in there. And so that goes on the bottom. Normally what would happen then is, you know, this would go here, this donut, and then you'd snap it together like that. And so this here fits into that donut this way, and this goes in the top. Normally you can snap this snap in here, but guess what? It doesn't fit. And on one of them I bent the piece. That's how cheap they are. So I have to actually just put this in, screw it in, and then put this on the flat part here. It's not flat, but, and kind of hold it there, and then bring this down slowly and kind of jiggle it to make sure it's locked in, and then pray for the best. And it looked like I bent one of the bars still, because they don't fit. It doesn't fit my dies. I mean, it'll still work, but it's not as good as the Buckle Guys snaps. So then this one, you know, and these aren't pretty on, they're pretty on this side, but they don't look like this. If you have cam snaps, you know, they'll be smooth on both sides. But I'm not going to use them for this. Looks like I pressed too hard. So then this tower will go in. So both flat pieces are the same. It is kind of pretty, but still, it's cheap. And this one goes together a little better. And then this button just goes on the tower, and we have to change them. So that tower there fits inside this tower's hole. So you just slide it on. And this goes in the top. This notch goes in here. And these you can get anywhere on the internet. So I'll hold that, go slowly, check that it's hooked in. I really press that hard and hope that it snaps. And it did. So that looks nice. So then for this one, I'll go ahead and just puncture in the center of this circle first into my finger a little. Just twist it, don't push it into your finger. And then move my finger away. And then what I've been doing is laying it flat and then making sure that the sides are flush. And I'm just kind of taking this I didn't really puncture that in the center, and I'm pushing down, making sure it's flush. Can't really see what I'm doing. I didn't really go in the center of that hole. And as I'm holding it down, I'll pull this one up and then see where I'm at. I'm pretty good. So then I'll just keep going like that. And, you know, I went all the way through. So at least I know now I have a hole started there. And then, so again, this will match this one. And actually, while that die is in, I'll just put this one in. So this tower goes in the back, just like that tower. Oh, I forgot to make the hole with the hole punch. I didn't even need it for that one. So let me see if it's, I don't have the indentation still. See if I can do it with that. Probably not. It's not as good as the owl. I guess it's pretty good. Put that from behind through there. It's kind of nice to leave the threads in. I don't know, it might make it more secure. This one's a little lumpy right there, but it's fine. And then this button goes on top. Put it on the tower. Make sure. It looks great. If I could focus in on the stitching. I put this one on a little off center, I think. The snap looks it. See? Oh, well, I screwed up. I should have just used the hole punch and went in the holes instead of doing the awl. But, you know, live and learn. So this is a 1-inch swivel snap. So there you go. So there's this version, and then there's this version. And this version's not rounded because I didn't cut it yet, because I was going to order a half round cutter. This version I like better because you can make it with leather. And it just looks really nice with leather and suede. And you can cut it even closer. The stitching looks really nice. But either way, it looks good. And this one has the big snaps, and this one has the smaller ones. These are the bright gold